Many unsolved mysteries that have baffled experts for decades still need explaining, as they're still not solved. These unexplained events include mysterious disappearances, horror stories of haunted buildings, puzzling accounts of UFO sightings, and creepy internet mysteries, to name but a few. Number 5. The scary unsolved mystery of the Black Forest haunting began in 1990 when a family moved into a new house, but they soon learned that it wasn't quite as idyllic as they had first thought. Steve Lee and his family moved into a house in the Black Forest area of Colorado in 1990, but unbeknownst to them, the previous owner had experienced paranormal activity, but he told very few people of his experiences, as he thought he would be branded as insane. And so as the Lee family moved in, they were completely unaware of the house's history, but soon they started experiencing inexplicable events. At first, the activity was barely noticeable, with lights and electronic devices turning on and off. They also heard strange noises, but as they were situated in the woods, they chalked it up to animal sounds or trees creaking in the wind. But soon, things started to get worse when the family's children started complaining that they saw shadowy figures moving through the woods surrounding the house. Not long after, the entire family noticed a chemical-type smell that burned their throats, and at first they thought they were being targeted by pranksters. But when they installed motion detectors and cameras around their house, they realized that something far stranger was going on. The motion detectors would go off when no one was near them, eventually alerting the family to 62 separate false break-ins. The police traveled to the house on 45 occasions, but no evidence was ever found that someone had been in the house, and nothing was ever stolen. This prompted Steve to add more cameras to the house, and he captured strange beams of light, orbs, and ghostly figures that moved throughout the house. On one occasion, as the family arrived home, they found their living room inundated with flashing lights, and they heard what sounded like people stomping on the house's roof. At night, they started hearing chains rattling, and on one occasion, orchestra music playing. They decided to bring in a team of paranormal experts who reported having their equipment knocked over and feeling the presence of several spirits. Many people believe that the house is situated on a rainbow vortex, which serves as a gateway between the world of the living and the departed. Though this is mere speculation, and the strange mystery of the Black Forest haunting remains unsolved. Number 4. In October of 1939, a strange mystery started to unfold in Provincetown, Massachusetts, when children in the area started reporting that they had seen a strange figure that had appeared out of thin air. The children would return to their houses, terrified and shaking, and tell their parents that the figure they had seen was extremely tall, dressed in black, and that it growled at them before disappearing as quickly as it had materialized. Some of the children claimed that it had a deformed face with glowing eyes, but as it was near Halloween, most of the adults assumed that someone was playing a prank while wearing a costume. But this soon changed when an adult reported seeing the same figure. Mary Costa was walking past City Hall when she saw an impossibly tall figure with pointed ears and glowing eyes jump out of some nearby bushes. It loomed over her, staring menacingly before it suddenly turned and fled with strides that were far bigger than any human is capable of. She ran into a nearby coffee shop to report what she had seen, and a few men decided to look for the figure with no success. The police were contacted, but they didn't take the reports too seriously until more adults started reporting seeing the same figure, sometimes laughing in an inhuman voice. Some people reported that it was incredibly fast and able to leap a 10-foot fence in a single bound. Even more baffling, police would receive reports of sightings from different parts of town at the same time, leaving them baffled. One man, Charles Farley, managed to fire a shot at the figure, but he reported that it had no effect and the phantom merely laughed at him before jumping over a fence in a single leap. Other reports came in of people being easily overpowered by the being and thrown through the air effortlessly, suggesting that the figure had incredible strength. In one incident, a group of police officers encountered the figure, and they witnessed it jumping over a 10-foot fence. The strange apparition would go on to torment the town for the next 7 years, until a man named Louis Genard threw boiling water at it, causing it to run screaming into the night, never to return. Number 3. When a mysterious noise started to plague a town in Oregon, residents and investigators were left baffled as to its origins, especially when it abruptly stopped and was never seen again. In 2016, the town of Forest Grove became the site of an unsolved mystery when people started reporting that they had heard a loud shrieking sound in the middle of the night. The sound was described by those who experienced it firsthand as similar to a note being played on a violin. It would typically occur at night, lasting just a few minutes at a time, and at first it was considered to be a minor irritation until Andrew Dawes, a professor at Pacific University, started doing his own research. He asked residents who heard the noise to pinpoint their location on a map, and it soon became clear that the shriek was being heard in different parts of town. Some people described it as similar to car brakes squealing, only at a higher pitch, and it was so loud they had to cover their ears. But despite his best efforts, Dawes was unable to find the source of the sound, and soon theories were put forward as to what may be causing it. Some people speculated that the sound was being caused by extraterrestrial craft, that it was a sign of the end of the world, or that it was a mating call of a Bigfoot. Other, more level-headed theories proposed that it was caused by bulbs in street lamps or a faulty valve in a water tower. The police were still at a loss as they couldn't locate the sound's origins, and they released a statement in which they stated that they believed there to be a logical explanation for the phenomenon. The last reported incident occurred on the 27th of February of that year, after which the sound wasn't heard again, and no explanation has ever been found, leaving it to become an unsolved mystery that will be retold for years to come. Number 2. In August of 1976, Jack Weiner and his brother Jim were on a canoe trip in Allagash, Maine, along with their two friends, Chuck Rack and Charlie Foltz. Shortly after arriving, they set up their camp and headed down the river, but that night they noticed a strange light in the sky that was following them. They didn't think too much of it until 2 nights later when the light returned and Charlie decided to try to signal it. He signaled Morse code for SOS, and suddenly the light beamed straight down on them. They became frightened and decided to row back to shore, but as they did so, the light continued to follow them. When they eventually arrived back at their camp, they found that their fire, which they had stoked well before leaving, had burned out, suggesting that they had been away for hours rather than a few minutes that they had spent fishing. Unable to find an explanation, they shrugged it off and continued their trip without further incident. They told all of their families of the strange incidents, but it would be a further 12 years before they spoke of it again. In 1988, Jim and Jack started having nightmares about the trip, in which all 4 of the men are sitting inside of a strange craft. They both reported that they had felt terrified during the dreams, and when the nightmares kept recurring, they decided to contact Ray Fowler, a UFO researcher. All 4 of the men agreed to be hypnotized separately without discussing the events of that night with each other, and it was found that they all had the same memory of being taken aboard a craft where they were studied. Jack was able to remember the faces of the beings aboard the craft, describing them as terrifying. Charlie stated that the craft was like a doctor's office, and that the beings used a weird panel to collect skin samples from his chest, arms, legs, and thighs. The men were all given polygraph tests, which they all passed, and although many people believed that they fabricated the events for monetary gain, they maintained that their accounts of that night were accurate. In 2016, however, Chuck stated that he wasn't being entirely truthful, but that he had indeed seen the mysterious lights as they had reported. No further incident from the area was ever reported, and the Allagash abductions remain a mystery that may never be solved. Number 1. Puzzling events unfolded in August of 1660 in the village of Charingworth in Camden, England, when 70-year-old William Harrison disappeared without a trace. On the 16th of August, William was collecting rent for his employer and seemed to be taking longer than usual to return, prompting his wife to send their servant John Perry to look for him. When neither man had returned the following morning, William's son, Edward, decided to look for them, and he came across John, who stated that he was unable to find William. The two men traveled to Ebrington, where they learned that William had indeed been collecting rent, but no one had any idea where he might be. Shortly after, Edward found his father's comb, hat, and collar, which was stained with biological material, lying next to the road. Suspicion immediately fell on John, who explained that he hadn't returned that night because he had gotten lost. He admitted that he was too scared to look for William, as it was very dark out, and he decided to hide out in the house's hen house, where he stayed until midnight when the moon supplied enough light for a search. But he was hampered by fog, and before he knew it, he had gotten hopelessly lost. He slept under a bush until morning, when he resumed the search and was eventually found by Edward. Under interrogation, John claimed that his mother and brother, Joanne and Richard, were responsible for William's demise, and that they had left his body in a pond. The pond was searched, but nothing was found, and despite claiming that they were innocent, Joanne and Richard pleaded guilty, along with John, resulting in their executions. But 2 years later, William came walking back into town. He claimed that he had been kidnapped and sold into slavery, after which he was taken to Turkey. A year later, he was able to find passage to Portugal on a ship, where he was given money to travel back to England. But given his age, it was unlikely that his story was true, and to this day, no plausible explanation for William's disappearance has ever been found, leaving investigators and prosecutors baffled as to what had actually transpired. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.